This is quarter 2, week 5, and today we're talking about how you can combine sentences. First, we have to talk about dependent and independent clauses. Dependent clauses have a subject and a verb. However, they lack a complete thought. A couple weeks ago in 2.2, when we talked about clauses and phrases, dependent clauses have a subject and a verb, but are not complete sentences. It needs to rely on an independent clause, or a complete sentence, to become a complete sentence of its own. It's dependent on an independent clause. An example of a dependent clause is, after Tyler called his friend. It has a subject, Tyler, and it has a verb, called, but it's still not a complete thought. After Tyler called his friend, what happened? Independent clauses have a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. They are complete sentences. He met him at the park. He is our subject, met is our verb. We have a complete sentence because it's a complete thought. Now, simple sentences have only a subject and a complete predicate. For example, the dog barked. The dog is our subject, barked is our predicate. However, the second sentence is also a simple sentence. The big hairy dog with sharp teeth barked at the mailman. The big hairy dog with sharp teeth is our subject, and barked at the mailman is our complete predicate. So this is our complete subject, complete predicate. If it only has one complete subject and one complete predicate, it is a simple sentence, no matter how complicated the subject and predicate can be. Complex sentences are a little bit different. A dependent clause needs an independent clause to become a complete sentence. So when you have a dependent clause and an independent clause, you have a complete sentence. For example, we already said that the dog barked was a complete sentence. Complete. That's also called an independent clause. Now, when the mailman arrived has a subject, has a verb, but it is not a complete sentence because when the mailman arrived is a dependent clause. It has to rely on our complete sentence past the comma in order to be a complete sentence. So when the mailman arrived, the dog barked is a complete sentence. It is a dependent clause plus an independent clause. Subordinate conjunctions connect a dependent clause to an independent clause. I had you write some of these examples down a couple weeks ago, but it's always good to review our conjunctions. After and less, while, although, until, whenever, because, before, if, and once. These are not all of the conjunctions, but they're some of the most common. Now, talking about commas. When the dependent clause is the beginning of the sentence, you follow it with a comma. After the dog barked is a dependent clause, so we put a comma after it before our independent clause. The owner took him outside. Now, when the dependent clause is at the end of a sentence, you don't need a comma. For example, the owner took the dog outside after he barked. After he barked is still a dependent clause, but because it's at the end of the sentence, we do not use a comma. Now, how can I combine sentences? Being able to combine sentences can help you write more smoothly. Many times you can say things in one sentence better than you can say them in two. This is part of being a concise writer. There are 3 sentence combining tricks. You can share important words, you can create phrases, or you can join sentences. First one, sharing important words. Sometimes you can eliminate needless sentences by taking key words for other sentences and putting them into one sentence. For example, the milk spoiled, it was 2 weeks old. Those are 2 simple sentences that we can combine. The 2-week-old milk spoiled. The water was cold, the water was dirty, the water was polluted. Instead of repeating the water was over and over again, we can just combine these sentences and say the water was cold, dirty, and polluted. Second thing you can do is you can make phrases. Now, there's this thing called an appositive. I don't expect you to remember that, but it's good to just keep in the back of your head. Sometimes we use an entire sentence to describe something when we could have just used a phrase in another sentence. An appositive is a way of renaming something in a sentence. You put commas on either side of an appositive. So, you could say, Mr. Jones is my coach. He taught me to bunt a ball. Or, you could say, my coach, comma, Mr. Jones, comma, taught me to bunt a ball. You put commas around Mr. Jones because it is renaming my coach. It's just saying it in a different way. Henry went to get some paper. He went down the hall. You can combine those. You can say Henry went down the hall to get some paper. Or we can join sentences. Elsa, shh, making a video here. Sorry, that's my dog. When two sentences share a similar thought, you can combine them into a compound sentence. So, we've talked about simple sentences and complex sentences, and now we're talking about compound sentences. When you combine two sentences using a comma and a fanboys, just like we did with run-ons, it's a compound sentence. We are having a party, all my friends are invited. We are having a party, we had a comma and a fanboy, and all of my friends are invited. That makes this a compound sentence. It has a subject and a predicate, and a second subject and a second predicate, separated by a comma and a fanboy. On to our vocab from this section. Summarize. To provide a brief account of. My friend summarized the class for me after I was absent. Docile is easily taught, led, or controlled. The timid lamb was docile. Catastrophe is a tragic event. This is one of my favorite words. The oil spill was an environmental catastrophe. Perturb, to cause to be worried or upset. I didn't mean to perturb my mother by missing curfew. Robust is strong and healthy. The robust football player was the talk of the town. And this says that you have now completed today's note session, but before we put these away, I do want to add one thing. Just to kind of summarize what we've done. A simple sentence has a complete subject plus a complete predicate. It is a simple sentence. A compound sentence has complete subject and complete predicate, comma, fanboy. Sorry, that should be a B, not a D. Complete subject, complete predicate. So it's two complete simple sentences separated by a comma and a fanboy. The last one we talked about, well, actually the first one, are complex sentences, which is an independent clause and a dependent clause. They can go in either order. The dependent can come first or the independent come first. It doesn't matter. But those are the three types of sentences we've talked about so far. We're going to talk a little bit more about them next week, but it's important that you know these. Now, you've just completed today's note session. Please write your summary and place your notes at the back of the prongs of your grammar folder. And we will practice this on Monday. So if you're a little bit confused, it's okay. We'll talk through it again.